for first time today, welcome. This network is a network of coaching supervisors, but everybody who is interested in supervision are welcome. We have coaches or other people interested in the topic of coaching supervision. Every month we have a different speaker that presents on a topic, and we ask the presenter to offer an opportunity for people to interact with each other. So today we have Lynn Harrison with us, and Lynn is going to be doing a session on systemic thinking and systemic supervision. And she's going to present a case, and then we're going to work in small groups to discuss the case and to learn from each other. So this is the agenda for the day, and welcome the people who are joining us. Great to see some faces. You want to say hi to the people who are just joining us, your name and where you're calling from?
Yes, I'm Andrew. I'm calling in from Tokyo. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Damian. This is Al calling from Jakarta. And congratulations for your work.
Thank you.
It super brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an honor to receive an recognition from the EMCC for the Supervision Award, and also Michelle Morel, who's here with us, also was a recipient of the same recognition. So we're pretty honored for that. And Felicia, great to see you again here. It's so good to have you back.
Hi, Damien. Hi, everyone. I'm Felicia from Singapore. Very happy to be back.
Great to have you.
Okay, and I'll say hi, Herman from Singapore. And Felicia, it's not sunny today. It's raining like the cats and dogs. So for the last 3 days, it's been rain and rain and rain. But happy to be here.
Great. So for the people who are just joining us, people are introducing each other and saying your name and where you're calling from. And we noticed, I'm pretty impressed. I think this is one of the meetings with people from the most representation from countries from Asia. And Michelle, who have been here since the beginning with me, it took some time to get where we are today, but we're very proud that our goal is to bring visibility of coaching supervision to Asian countries. So it's great that you all are here. So we want to welcome. I don't know if anybody have not said hi yet. Martin, you shall join us. You want to say hi? It's early for you. You're really committed here.
Yes, it's early for me, but it's not more early than for Michelle. So, well, it must be even less early for me than for him, because I think right now he's like half an hour in terms of sun, even earlier for him. So I'm Martin, I'm from Paris, and I'm a big fan and supporter of Lynn. That's about it, right?
Yeah, really sure.
I'm not speaking very loud because everyone's asleep here.
Lina, do you want to say hi? It's so good to see you. It's been a while. Do you want to say hi to people and where you're calling from?
Hi, everybody. My name is Lina from Jakarta, Indonesia, and I'm glad to be here and ready to learn something new here.
Welcome to the call today. And Sherry, do you want to say hi? I think you're the last one.
Hi, everybody. I'm from Dallas, Texas in the United States, and I am a part of one of the supervision cohorts, and Lynn is amazing if you don't know her already.
Okay, Lynn, as you can see, you already have fans following you. Well, this is great. So, Lynn, why don't you share with people what you want people to know about you before we start?
Sure. Well, I live in Whistler, British Columbia, and for half the year, I normally live in California. So I'm back up in cold country right now. And I have an MCC. I have a PhD in organizational systems. So when we went through the supervision training and we were introduced to this systemic model that Peter Hawkins originally developed, I just thought, wow, this is right up my alley, because that's the way I like to coach. And I think it's really important and valuable in our supervision work. So I'm happy to be talking on that topic tonight, or today for some of you.
Yeah, so you can jump to the topic when you're
okay.
I will make you co-host. Do you need to share some slides?
Yeah, I do have a PowerPoint. if I can bring that up.
So now you're the co-host.
Okay, so let me just go back to. Sorry, it just disappeared for a sec there. I'm gonna pull it back up. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Not yet, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Maybe what Santa will help is if you turn off everything that you have in the computer and you leave only your presentation, so then you can find it really easy.
Okay.
Do that.
Oops, let me just see here.
But Lynn is still not co-host here, Damien.
No?
You're right.
Yeah, I
It's
don't have-
Herman that being a co-host here.
Yeah, I
You're
don't.
right.
Emails
I made somebody else
open.
co-host by mistake. Thank you for
Oh, okay.
telling me.
Well, I'll try it again. Okay, maybe that's part of what's going on here. Okay.
Yeah, so we can see you now.
Yeah. Is that better? And then from the beginning. How's that?
Perfect.
You can see it? Okay, awesome. All right, so it's my pleasure to be talking about the seventh eye of the 7-eye model, which emphasizes that everything the coachee is attending to in their coaching is connected to the wider systemic context. And given the complexity that's often involved with all the different systems at play, I think this is really rich territory for us as supervisors. So what I'd like to talk about, first of all, I'd just like to share a little bit about my intro to systemic thinking, talk about 4 core systemic thinking principles that I think can guide our conversation tonight, and then the new distinctions in Hawkins' 7-eyed model, and then finally have you talk about your experience working with the 7th eye. So if that sounds okay, what I'd like to do is just start a little bit with a story. I call it the perfect storm. So I first got into systemic thinking when I was researching a phenomenon called abrasive leadership. So I was this executive coach, and I would be working with the leader, delivering a 360 feedback report, and you know, everything in the report would say this person was an ogre and horrible to work with. And yet the person sitting in front of me in the 360 conversation or in my coaching was really pleasant, very charming, witty, intelligent. And I was wondering, you know, why this person seemed to treat people so poorly as a leader and yet could be very pleasant with someone like me. And so when I started looking at the academic and popular literature, what I found is that most of it portrayed these individuals as defective, disordered, deranged people who should basically be ousted from their organizations. There was very little written from the perspective of the so-called perpetrators. And so, and what caused their behavior. So what I discovered was that there was really this perfect storm going on. Yes, these individuals had personal qualities that were problematic. They were intense, driven, competitive, perfectionistic, short-tempered, but they also carried out their roles in organizations that somehow condoned their behavior, or at least tolerated it. And many of these managers were actually promoted, not because they knew how to lead, but because they got results, something that was valued in their companies. So on the one hand, the organization wanted coaching for these leaders because their behavior was problematic. And on the other hand, the organization was rewarding their very behavior. And as you can imagine, if you just did coaching that focused only on the individual and didn't take into account the system around him or her, the results would be pretty minimal or short-lived. So these, I think, are the kind of dilemmas and situations that are often brought to supervision, where there's this kind of complexity going on. And so before we kind of go further, I wanted to then shift a little bit into talking about just 4 principles of systemic thinking that I think are really applicable to the work that we do in supervision and in coaching. The first one is just the fact that complex problems are almost always systemic. You know, people bring stuff to supervision that they are grappling with. They're not easy fixes, or they wouldn't be bringing them to supervision. And they're complicated because there's no clear cause and effect. And this is partly because everything is connected to everything else, and we can see the parts, but we can't always see how they're all connected together. And so, for example, in the case of the abrasive leader, the coach might bring to their supervisor the fact that this abrasive leader got this 360 that reports that they have poor emotional intelligence, they're goal-oriented, very demanding of people. But what the report might not tell the coach is that the abrasive manager's boss is also abrasive and has turned a blind eye to the behavior, seeing the results that this leader gets is more important than their behavior. So it gives you kind of a sense of just these things that can be going on in the background that we may not see immediately as a coach. And so principle number 2 is, I think, interesting in that it's this idea that systems, starting with the self system, are nested within other systems that replicate what's going on. So for example, this manager who would be in the self system at the bottom circle there, they may be this hard driving individual that's focused on getting results and not caring very much about the impact on other people. But chances are pretty good that the management team that they're part of has similar values, or, with the same orientation to achieving goals, maybe managers competing with one another to achieve goals and so on. So it's quite interesting to then look at what's in the management system that is reinforcing or rewarding the behavior of the manager who's bringing their own self-system, like they might have always been this, hard driving, goal-oriented kind of person to the team. Then outside of that, if you look at the next nested system, it might be the shareholders who are key stakeholders here, the board of directors. And maybe for them, financial performance is most important, and all they really care about is whether the managers are hitting their numbers every quarter. And they don't care about how that gets accomplished. So again, you see the same kind of pattern going on at the next level of stakeholders. And then finally, if we took it out to the level of industry, the economy, the society, this may be a business that's in a very competitive industry where it's all about getting results, and it's an eat or be eaten kind of environment. So again, what's going on with that individual manager may in fact be a reflection of what's happening in the outside world, the wider context. Make sense so far? Okay, so principle 3, here we tend to look at events or patterns, but often we don't look at the structures that are going on underneath. So an event might be something like this leader behaves badly, or they get a poor 360, or the event might be employees complained about this leader's behavior. And so the immediate reaction when we see these things is to look at a quick fix. So what might we do? Well, let's transfer that employee to another department. It's probably just a personality rub. And so very often the automatic reaction in the organization the coach is working with is to find a quick way to deal with the issue. But of course, that's rarely the end of it, because then what happens is another employee starts to complain about the leader's behavior. And in fact, a number of people may not be very happy there, and they do an employee engagement survey, that shows a pattern of a lot of people wanting to leave the organization or feeling that the organization cares more about its results than it cares about how it treats its people, even though they've said that their value is they value their people. People aren't feeling respected. And so you could address it at the pattern level, but really to get at the systemic level of what's going on in the organization is starting to get at, so what are the beliefs, the values of the company that's maybe really driving what's going on? And it could be that the company holds a belief that, you know, people are lazy, and if you don't bark at them, they don't get things done. Or it could be a belief that authority figures should be respected, however they go about their work. And this could carry out into societal kind of values. So you can see that these structures are often so below the surface that they're not recognized. They're not recognized by the coach. And in fact, if the coach and the supervisor both work in the same organization, they may be drinking the Kool-Aid and really not be seeing some of these issues, or they've bought into the values of the organization themselves. So that takes us to principle number 4. And we hear Peter Hawkins talk about this idea of the flying fish. And that's the idea that the fish, because they live in the sea, are often last to know about the sea because they're immersed in it. And so very often the coach who's working in a system, particularly if the person's an internal coach, they may not be seeing some of these underlying structures that are going on. And in fact, the supervisor could be pulled into that as well. So the coach might, in the example of the abrasive leader, be focused on, from their perspective, I just need to alleviate the pain I'm seeing in the organization and teach this leader some skills of self-management or emotional intelligence. And they start to head in that direction, but they're not really paying attention to the fact that really the work that needs to happen is not just coaching this individual, but coaching the organizational system. And perhaps even that includes the boss of the leader who has decided that, oh, let's just give him a coach and hope that it all goes well. So you can see the kind of the layers that can be at play here. And so when we look at Hawkins Model, and the revised model really starts to open up our attention to all these different perspectives that are in the system beyond the individual. So the one at the bottom, mode 7.1, is about the client and what's going on there. And it goes up from there. But the individual and the organizational client and their stakeholders, that can be very interesting just in itself. You know, some of the abrasive leaders I've worked with come from a family system, for example, that really reinforced that way of treating people and really emphasized that if you got things done and you got moved up the ladder, that's more important than being popular and so on. So people can bring these value systems and ways of understanding the world even from their family. And then there's the whole piece around what's going on in the organization. Then as we go up from there, mode 7.2 and 7.3, now we're starting to talk about the coaching relationship. And there may be some things about how the coaching was contracted that's interesting for us as a supervisor to be paying attention to. And which stakeholders were involved and continue to be involved. So it may be that, for example, HR, who is paying for the coaching, may have their agenda like, we just want to get this person fixed so we don't have so many complaining employees. And we don't know how to fix their boss, so let's get someone from outside who can help fix the situation. Or if you go up, it might be the organization that the coach is working for, and they may say, look, I know this is a tough case. We hear you saying that this person's not particularly motivated to change, and their boss isn't that motivated for them to change, but the money's really good and we need the income for our coaching business. Or whatever it might be, right? There's just all these different factors at play. Or the coach may even just bring in and think, you know, I don't know if I've got what it takes to work with such a difficult client with all this complexity. So then as we go up, there's the supervisory relationship and the supervisors, stakeholders, and their training and background in accreditation. And then finally, the territory of wider context. So I'm going to shift over to that too, just do a little bit more talking, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. So the way that Eve Turner and Peter Hawkins have described this outer system in, you know, that goes beyond what we've talked about so far, is they say it's kind of like the rings of Saturn. So there's these different rings that go around, and the first ring is the immediate context. So where the coaching and supervision is taking place. The second ring is the various stakeholders that can be at play, and there's, as you can see, lots of different individuals with different agendas and value systems that are involved there. Finally, there's the social and cultural context, and then the more than human world, the ecosystem. So there's all these different levels of complexity that can show up in supervision. And often what's difficult is these different rings or systems have different needs, and sometimes they can conflict with each other. And that's where it gets extra tricky. So what I thought might be fun and interesting for us to look at tonight is if you can break into small groups, if you can help me with that, Damien. I thought it might be neat to just take some time, you know, the next 15 minutes or so to have a conversation about your experience with all these different systemic elements. And possibly if you can share with the people in your group a situation where you did not at first see the impact of the system. You know, what was initially presented in the way of events or even a pattern seemed pretty simple, but then you found as you got into it further, it was actually pretty complex with all these different threads that could be pulled. Or it was one where you realized that different players in the system had different needs that were actually in conflict. Does that make sense? Does that, Damien, does that?
Yeah, so do you want that somebody present in each group, or you want everybody to present for a couple of minutes, or how do you want people to distribute the time?
What I thought would be good is if, you know, anybody has something in their small group that comes to mind pretty quickly and the group wants to explore that. I think 15 minutes is all the time we really have. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For time
so
to
we have
debrief?
some time for people to come back and have a conversation all together.
Yeah, yeah. So does that work okay for just to see what emerges in the group that you can explore together, and someone can just share what they ran into, what they learned, and then the people who are in the group can also ask some questions around, so what about this or what about that?
Yeah, okay. So let's go to groups of 4 or 5 people. We're going to do that for 15 minutes. So Lynn, just to summarize what people are going to be doing is you're going to have for a volunteer, 1 or 2 volunteers to bring a case where you could see some of these dynamics or some of the things that you hear in the presentation today that relates to the case. Is that correct, Lynn?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's go for 15 minutes. Lynn, we are all back. So it's easier for you to facilitate the conversation.
Okay. Well, I got to be part of a really fantastic conversation, so thank you to my group. So I just would like anybody to speak about what they learned in their conversation with their colleagues, anything that struck you as important, as valuable? I think there was a message there for Andrew to share a screenshot.
Yes, I took a screenshot of your slide before we went to our breakout rooms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I can share that, certainly. Yeah. And I'll do that.
So I don't know if Lynn, it's okay to share the PowerPoint presentation with the participants. If they...
That's another option too.
Yeah.
Let me know how you feel about that. I took the screenshot just to facilitate the conversation in the breakout room.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that came up in my group was, you know, the new model that Hawkins has put out and all the pieces that are in it. And what I did is, it's like got that all the different 7, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then what he put on the outside were those rings and the dotted circles. And it's really kind of complex to look at it all. So I took the circles, the Saturn circles, and put it into nested systems as a separate diagram. But what my group remarked was that it's just reflective of how complex it really is, how messy it is, because you can't even put it all in one slide. But in terms of learning for you as a supervisor, as a coach, what came up for you? Al?
Yeah, well, I've done the supervision courses with Damian a couple of years ago, and what I always apply in my coaching, I haven't done many supervision sessions, by the way, but I take the principle, the spirits, and the practice into my coaching, is the ability to show up, because the 7I model is, you know, very delicate, and one can get caught up into just 1 or 2 eyes to focus on. But looking at the model, it requires a great presence to really and delicately going layer by layer. And also the well-being of the coach or the supervisor also play out in the conversation. And sometimes what has happened to the coach and the client also is happening in the supervision, on the supervisor himself or herself. So it's very very spooky sometimes, but also very much magical and opening.
Yes, yeah, great noticing. I think that's a really important point for us all to remember is, you know, we bring who we are and the state that we're in to whatever coaching or supervision conversation we're in. And sometimes we're not aware of the lens we're actually looking at the world through, even an emotional lens at the time. How about others? Observations?
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Janine.
Hi. Well done. Great presentation. Thank you. And so I was in a small group and of coaches, and I also had Damien with me as well. And as Damien shared, which just linking to what I think it was the last speaker, I've lost his name, said, you know, it's really having that presence and state of mind to be aware of the different systems that are there and potentially can't be seen or felt. There's just so much going on in some of these systems that we're working with. So, you know, Damien brought in the situation in the States at the moment in terms of what's going on. There's so much systems going on, and I brought in my own case of working in the Middle East, and as I was sharing with my group all of the things that were going on from a 7th eye perspective, there were just so many things. I really could have spoken for the whole 15 minutes just reeling out all of the different aspects and elements that were impacting the people that I was coaching. So it is, again, having, I guess, that real presence to be able to focus on, you know, what's going to be of most value to our client. And it also demonstrates how long I believe these coaching supervision powerful sessions can go for as well, because they can be, as everyone has really acknowledged, so incredibly complex. So that was what our group, I guess, you know, what came up for me in our group. So thank you for the opportunity to explore.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about just the being sensitive to what's going to be most helpful of all these different places we could look, and intuitively picking up what's actually going on at that structural level. It's not always evident, and yet can be really powerful. And it may just be all the fear around what's going on with COVID.
Yeah, exactly. And just to also add on to this, because one of the other members in our group also brought up something that was going on internally, potentially in their mind. It seems like an intrinsic motivation, but actually that motivation could come from so many things, again, going on outside externally. So yeah, it's having that presence of mind and intuition to be able to support the client to get to pinpoint where, you know, great value can come from supervision.
There is something that we have not discussed in the small group, but that I'm studying it and thinking about it, is if the system is unstable, according to the second level systems theory, there is an opportunity for a butterfly effect. And I have already observed butterfly effect. Well, butterfly effect is something you say in supervision, which seems just nothing, had a big effect on the organization. And I have observed that several times already. And I think that it's worth to study that more in depth and transform that into a tool or a methodology, because it's a big opportunity, I think.
And I think, you know, thank you for that. The most innocent observation can nudge the system. It's like a mobile, right? And things start to move from a little nudge.
But this can occur only if there is a big instability at the beginning. I mean, if the system is unstable. So you can identify that by doing a systemic analysis of the situation.
Well, building on that, we shared several examples in this very nice little group that we formed with 2 coaches and 3 supervisors. And we brought up 2 of the cases that were brought up were very similar, where the outside situation in the society was affecting the internal relationship and the shift in power. So the shift in power outside was affecting the shift in power in the company. And so there was a case about an expat person and a case in a hospital. And one of the things that we can do as supervisor, at least it's, well, my opinion, there are 2 things that seem quite important for me, is one, look at the system at large. So interview, or have people interview others. So get as many voices in to inform the system of the supervision relationship as possible, and see it, look at it. So use drawings to be able to look at it. So whatever type of drawings, some are more formal and have been described in literature, but if something to see what's happening, because seeing is really important in system. And that leads me to one of the first systems researcher in organizational development is Barry Oshry, and his book is Seeing Systems. And it's Seeing Systems. So we need to see it. And the second thing is, sometimes we approve something. We approve something in the situation. And one of our colleagues in the subgroup spoke about a coach who sided with their client. And so when we feel we're siding with, we're very well understanding what's going on. That is where we need to look at our own systems to see how our own system is interfering with what's going on.
Yeah, thank you for that. That came up in my group as well. And someone pointed out that very often the training that coaches get is very individual focused. So we learn laser focused listening and being in service to the client. And that often can be our primary focus. So we're not aware of the other things in the system that are going on, because that's not necessarily our lens or how we were trained.
I wanted to share from our group that we share different experience from coaches and supervisors experience, and to build on what has already been said, it is important when starting a supervision with a 7-eyed to choose to work from 2 or 3 perspectives, because it is not possible to work with more than that. So really to focus on 2 or 3 in maybe each session, because really, frankly speaking, it's not possible to have a global view of everything. This is just what I wanted to add, yeah.
And as long as we don't forget about I7, right? Because and I know this is what Hawkins said, you didn't say go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or that we did need to go to all eyes in a supervision. But I was noticing that often I never got to I7 because I was so focused on getting them.
So this is, Lynn, this is my experience also training supervisors. In many times people don't pay as much attention to the system. And I do believe it's really important to ask. For example, today I was coaching a client as a coach, not as a supervisor, but I was asking my client in South America, okay, how COVID is affecting you, how COVID is affecting your organization. So we do need to bring what's happened in the other systems and how this is affecting the client. So I do believe that question should be that we don't need to have the answers. That's an important thing that came up in our group also, is like what is important for the supervisor is to be curious. If the coach is not curious. So I think that this is something important here, is how the supervisor can challenge the coach if this coach is not being curious enough about what happened with the systems of the client. I think that's something to...
Yeah. Personally, I start with I7 in my coaching and supervision all the time. Yeah. First minute is on I7.
Great. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour. Anyone else like to say something?
I just want to say that I7 is, as a result of this session, is far more rich and more prominent than I previously imagined. I can almost imagine having one full session focusing on I7 and exploring them. And previously, when I was just starting out in supervision, I always thought, I7 was there, it's important, but I'll get to it if and when I get to it. Now it seems to be it could very well be a powerful place to start in some cases. And so thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to share, I resonate with what Andrew has shared, that it's so many layers, there's so much of complexity and nuances within each of that complexity that, if we really want to delve into I7, it will take some time, familiarizing with it, training around it. What are some possible, questions? Like what came up in our group was, who are the supervisor stakeholders? Even that to that level. So I feel we supervisors need to up our game and become clairvoyant so we can sense which one is the one that's...
So we need to wrap up. I don't know if anybody have a question for Lynn before we finish today. Anything, Lynn, that you would like to say to wrap up the session?
No, just thank you. And I appreciate, Damon, the opportunity to come and share some of my thoughts on something that's important to me. And I'm still in my learning journey around I7. So it was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a great presentation. We really appreciate this opportunity. I want to share a couple of resources. Francis, were you going to say anything? Francis, you want to go to say anything?
Just say bye.
I want to just share that the book from Peter Hawkins, Systemic Thinking, Systemic Coaching. This is a really great resource, and it's a brand new book. And I am considering including this book as part of my coaching supervision training, because I do believe that this way of thinking really makes a huge difference in the way that we work as coaches and as supervisors. So I highly recommend this as a good resource to think on the topic of today. What's coming up next month? We have Alex Yu from South Korea. She's going to be doing a session on intercultural supervision to see how do you work when you're supervising people from different cultures. What I do believe is very appropriate, with this amazing network that we have here, people from different cultures. That's one of the specialties from Cookie. She's an intercultural expert. So I think that you would enjoy that session. So we're going to be focusing on supervision and how to do that. And that is going to be, it's always the last Wednesday of the month in Asia, the last Tuesday of the month in the United States. This case was an exception because the last Wednesday of the month in Asia is now, but we have one more Tuesday in the United States. But in July, if you want to write this down, it's July 28th and 29th, the same time that today. We use a registration for these sessions, so there is always a different Zoom ID. So sorry, Jaya, you didn't have that ID, but for everybody, remember that you need to register to this event. So there is always a different ID. And July 28th and 29th. Now, there are a couple of other activities you may be interested. On July 20th, we have the American Coaching Supervisors Network, and it's not a good time for some of you, but if by any chance some of you are night people and you stay at night, like for us it's here 8 p.m. in Los Angeles, it's 10 p.m. for Sherry in Texas. So, we have people here for different times. If you're a night person around 10:30, 11 o'clock, you want to participate on July 20th, I am going to be presenting on working virtually. We did a research with Eve Turner. Eve Turner is one of the authors of this book with Peter Hawkins. Together, we put together a survey and a research on the differences on working virtually. And interestingly, this was before COVID-19. And now probably some of the answers may be different because many people say, never ever will work virtually. And now we have other options. So I think that this is going to be very interesting to share with you the results of our study. And it's going to be on July 20th. It's 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8:30 India. So from 8:30 p.m. India, the differences in times. In Jakarta, Singapore, it's a couple of hours later, I think. So you can manage that time. And if it is too late for you, we're going to record the session. And in we are working on a new Asian Coaching Supervisors Network website, but the American Coaching Supervisors Network has 20 videos from all of our sessions from the last 2 years. Great resources, take advantage of that. There are great presenters, great sessions. Take advantage of all of these webinars that are recorded and are available there. One more thing for people who are available, again, is early in the morning, but this Thursday, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have Fiona Adamson, who is one of the founders of CSA. Fiona is going to come to do a demo of coaching supervision for one of the programs that I am teaching. So if by any chance you are available on Thursday, this coming Thursday, will be Thursday very night, late in Asia. If you're available at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we are going to have a demo with Fiona. So if you, by any chance, don't receive, I have all of this information in my newsletter. If you don't have the information, please send me an email, and I will be happy to send you the information with all of the details of all of these activities. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I am very pleased that we have so many representation from so many different countries. And I look forward to bringing more awareness about coaching supervision in Asia. So if you know any colleagues, please invite them. As I was saying, next month, July 28th and 29th, Alex Yu from South Korea is going to be presenting an intercultural supervision. So looking forward to seeing you then. And thanks everybody for coming. And thanks, Lynn. It was a great presentation.
Okay.
So everybody have a good day, good night, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Damien,
thank
everyone.
you,
Thank you.
Damien. Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.